great kind of low-driven finish, bottom corner. And he pulled out the backflip celebration, of course.
I'd love to have that in the locker. Stick around to the end.
Yes.
We'll see Finn trying to do his first ever backflip off the table onto the floor, so make sure you stick around for that. Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is Academy Review. I'm joined by Finn, also known as Academy Scoop. How are you doing, Finn?
I'm very well, thank you, Joe. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Lots to go through this week, and not as much good news as there often is on these shows.
No, a bit of a mixed bag.
Bit of a mixed bag, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's happened? What's gone wrong?
Did we say we're going to start with the under-19s?
Let's go from there. Yeah. So that was the under-19s. What's the name of the competition? It's the European competition.
The UEFA Youth League.
There you go.
So it's the youth counterpart of the Champions League. So it's meant to be the premier European youth competition. It's difficult, as you'd imagine. I think the last time that an English team won it was 2015 with that Chelsea super team.
Okay.
And so English teams tend to struggle a lot. It's a very competitive competition.
Is that Chelsea team the one that had the likes of sort of Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham,
Loftus-Cheek and Hudson-Odoi? And I think that lot could be wrong. I don't know if the timeline.
I mean, it's been a while anyway.
It's been a while.
Have United ever won it?
Nope.
I was going to say I don't ever remember.
I don't think we've ever really gone far. I think we've always kind of struggled in it, to be honest.
So I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yep.
Why it's such a difficult thing. But what was the result? What was the sort of the lay of the land as we went into this game? Because it was a two-legged tie, wasn't it?
Yeah. So United were playing in the domestic champions pathway, I think it's called, because we qualified through our under-18 side winning the National League last season, as opposed to traditional qualification, which most of the teams got in through, which is your first team qualifying for the Champions League.
We don't do that.
We don't do that.
We're not good enough for that.
But our under-18s are good enough to qualify. But yeah, we went into the domestic Champions League, domestic Champions knockout phase, and we played the first leg against AZ Alkmaar. So this was the third round that United had played of qualification rounds, and in the away leg we lost 2-1. It wasn't televised, so it was hard to really find out what happened, but I'm told that United were kind of dominated, to be honest. It was a really tough game and could have been a wider scoreline. Apparently we were quite lucky to keep it at just 2-1. Our goal was through an own goal, so not great going into this, but but all we needed was a goal at the very least to keep it equal and potentially take the game to penalties. So it wasn't out of reach despite the first leg, and we were playing at home with a home crowd, home advantage, so you would have hoped that United could get something out of it, but it ended up being quite a disappointing
Where was
game.
the game at
Old Trafford.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, that obviously isn't every game, is it?
No. I think we try and let the youngsters play at Old Trafford for like UEFA Youth League games or FA Youth Cup games. Yeah. So always a great experience for the youngsters to be playing in a big stadium with, I think there was a few hundred fans that turned out for it. So nothing amazing, but still good experience to play in front of a slightly larger crowd. But yeah, it ended up being quite a disappointing display and result. I think Alkmaar basically, going into the game, had accepted that all they need to do is defend the lead that they created for themselves in the away leg, and they ended up doing so. United put out quite an experienced side, so the likes of Ethan Wheatley and Jack Kingdon, Louis Jackson, these experienced under-21 players now. Yep. Yeah, they struggled to really break down Alkmaar's block because they were playing quite defensively, and really struggled to find the breakthrough that we needed.
Why do you think they struggled so much? And why? Just generally, why? Because it finished 0-0, obviously. Yeah. So like you said, even getting to the last few minutes, I think they brought obi-martin on.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. But why is it that we sort of struggle so much in this competition? I know there are good youngsters around Europe, but United are, we're one of the biggest teams with a great history of academy prospects. Why do we always struggle in this competition, do you think?
It is an interesting one because you look at the domestic domination that we have, 10 out of 10 wins in the league, putting aside teams like they're nothing, scoring 5 or 6 goals a game. So it is interesting that we come to these European opposition and can't dominate games in the same way and can't really, we tend not to get great results. I think part of it is that Alkmaar are just a really good side. They won the competition in 2023. Okay. They beat Real Madrid and Barcelona along the way, so they're an academy with pedigree.
Yeah.
But based on how they played, at least in the home leg yesterday, you would have thought United could get something out of it. They didn't really show anything spectacular. And so it's a confusing one that we never really seem to get the best out of our players when it comes to these European games. One idea I've got is that there's a slightly different approach to coaching for like Dutch teams. Obviously, you think back to like the total football philosophy, and it's very ingrained in Dutch football to play as a cohesive kind of collective as a team, and maybe that goes into how they end up playing in these games. So they're more drilled as a team and kind of can carry out a tactical approach more kind of cohesively than maybe English teams who are coached more individually based on the individual players. And I think we platform individual expression maybe a little bit more.
Right.
But it is interesting, and I hope that in subsequent seasons we can find out a way to start winning these games and putting on dominant performances.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? Especially like you said, I know this was the under-19s, but there's a lot of those under-18s who can go and play for that under-19s team. And would you say it's mostly the under-18s?
Well,
or is it a sort of combination?
I have a little bit of a gripe with the team selection in these.
Talk me through that, because who was coaching this team? Because this is almost like you got like the English rugby team, and then you've got the British and Irish Lions coming out.
Yes.
So it's like a combination of the under-18s, the under-21s.
It's all a bit confusing. So Adam Lawrence is technically the head coach of the under-19 side, but Travis Binion, the under-21 coach, is also on the staff for it. So
Adam Lawrence, obviously, I know most people know this, but he's the under-18s coach.
Yes, the under-18s coach.
Smashing it for 2 years.
Yeah, plus. Obviously they've dominated in domestically for 2 years now. So he's a fantastic coach, as is Travis Binion, and they kind of share the responsibilities of the under-19s. But Adam Lawrence is, the guy on the touchline shouting out the instructions. So so the team we put out was actually mainly the under-21s. So you had Ethan Williams, Ethan Wheatley starting, and most of the under-18s were on the bench. And I understand it, because you want to put out your experienced players against European opposition in a big competition. But with the success that the under-18s are having this season, I would have liked to see a few more of them involved, just to bring something new. I think Amir Ibragimov was the only clear starting under-18 player, if I'm not wrong. And we waited until very late in the game. It was the 80th minute that we actually brought on the 2 goal scorers on the bench, who were Biancheri and Obi-Martin, who have just Chido Obi now, who have shown throughout the season that they're fantastic goal scorers, that when United need a result, need something off the bench, they can come on and produce something. And it was weird, because we waited so long to actually get them on, to the point where the game had almost gone a little bit stale. As the game progressed, United played further up the pitch. We were really kind of penning them in, but Alkmaar were happy to just soak up that pressure, and it meant that we were hit on the break quite a few times. And I want to give credit to 2 players in particular, because Will Murdoch in net, United's goalkeeper, who I think has been a really pleasant surprise both for the under-18s and all the games he's played this season. He's been really assured, looks comfortable on the ball, and a great shot stopper.
That's good.
But he was solid, and he kept us in the game on a number of occasions. There was one point where Alkmaar had broken on the counter-attack, and there was an opportunity to kill the game and kill the fixture, but Will Murdoch made a fantastic save, 1v1, and it looked like he was backpedaling to the point where he'd be beaten, but he made a really good recovery and a great save.
That's good. I bet he's hardly had any work to do for the last sort of 2 years. Exactly. It must be hard for him trying to come through and impress the first team. It's like, how many shots do you concede a game? 1.5 on average.
Yeah. It is. I guess the only test is how good their concentration is. Yeah. If you're dominating the majority of your games, then they've got to stay concentrated and stay on the ball for when those 1 or 2 shots that they do concede a game comes. The other player is Jacob Devaney, because in the last 20 minutes or so, because United were playing so high, there was so much space in behind, and he's a central midfielder, quite defensive minded, but he was, for those 20 minutes, acting like a bit of a sweeper centre-back. Okay. So a lot of the times he'd be United's last defender. There was a moment where United were dispossessed and Alkmaar cleared the ball high and long, and it was Devaney was watching it come down for 4 or 5 seconds, and Alkmaar, one of their forwards, was advancing.
Yeah.
And it looked like one of those moments maybe where he'd get caught out. You think back to, was it that Sancho goal against Chelsea a couple of years ago? It was like that, and you worried for a little bit, but Devaney watched it perfectly and kind of brought it down on the turn with a beautiful touch.
That's good.
And turned away from pressure and got a deserved round of applause from the crowd.
Yeah, because if you let that bounce, then who knows what's going on. Or
it
try and control it and you knock it behind
especially when United are trying to stay in the game. There was urgency and desperation that you could see in those last 20, 15 minutes to get that goal and send it to penalties at the least. So a lot of credit to Jacob Devaney for the job he did as a sweeper, because he looked really assured in a role that he isn't usually expected to do. United just struggled to find that breakthrough.
So they're out now. That's done.
They've bowed out of the competition. Yeah,
it's a shame that.
It is a big shame, and you would have hoped that they could at least get past the domestic champions qualification phase. Obviously, Alkmaar are a great opposition, so it's not like
it's not completely embarrassing.
Yeah, but it is disappointing, and especially with the quality that we know there is in the squad, you would have hoped to see them go a little bit further and be tested against other European option.
Yeah, it's a shame.
So,
let's move on to the under-21s then. They played against Rochdale.
Yeah.
How did that go?
It was actually a good game.
Yeah.
United, again, for playing against pro senior opposition, no matter the level, they controlled the game really well. It was kind of a slow first half, but we protected the ball well, created a lot of chances, mainly through Jack Fletcher and Ethan Ennis. Ennis put in a few great crosses, most of them finding Ethan Wheatley, who couldn't quite find that kind of cutting edge to open the scoring. But for the most part, United dominated the first half. It was nice to see Aidan Barlow, who an ex-academy graduate of United, playing on the wing for Rochdale, and he created some threat. There was one moment where he ran it down the right wing and cut it back, but it was really well saved by Dermot Mee to keep the score at 0-0. And the game really opened up in the second half. United started dominating a little bit more, and the chances started flowing. But it wasn't until we brought on Chido Obi that we actually found the breakthrough. Within 2 minutes of his introduction, he'd already picked up an assist. So he held the ball up really well and laid it off to Amir Ibragimov, who finished from a decent way outside the box. Great kind of low-driven finish, bottom corner, and he pulled out the backflip celebration. That's of course.
Good. I'd love to have that in the locker.
Yeah,
just be able to do a backflip.
How long do you think it would take you if you had to learn?
To learn. Probably you spend a lot of time on one of those foam pits.
Yeah.
What you're doing. I reckon, give me 2 weeks.
You're quite tall though, aren't you?
Yeah, all right, 2 years.
2 years?
2 years and I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well,
I think you could do one.
What, right now?
You've got youth on your side.
Yeah.
I'm 12 years older than you.
Yeah, I don't think so.
We'll try it. Stick around to the end.
Yes.
We'll see Finn trying to do his first ever backflip off the table onto the floor, so make sure you stick around for that.
Do stick around.
Chido Obi-Martin, obviously, so much spoken about him. He's now the under-18s all-time leader in goals.
Leading top scorer.
And I saw the list of players. It's not necessarily a who's who of great Premier League careers, but then I guess, why do you think that is? Is it because a lot of times you don't get that many games in the under-18s if you're seen as truly exceptional, or is it because he's maybe younger than the most people on there?
I think that's a great point that you said about how usually if they're dominant at under-18 level, it's not long before they're given a chance in the first team.
Yeah.
And you look at a lot of those names, most of their goals came during second year of under-18s,
okay.
Whereas the really dominant players, I think a sign that someone has potential to really make it in the first team is that they are dominant in their first year of under-18 football after signing their scholarships. Chido Obi, scored almost all of his goals before his first year as an under-16. And so I think, I think that's one of the main differences, and maybe one of the reasons why not many of those players on that list went on to be really dominant strikers at the top level. But it bodes well for Chido Obi, because a lot of these goals that he scored, he is the leading all-time goal scorer, and he's done most of it as an under-16 player.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because like when you see like the list of all-time top championship goal scorers, it's like, most of these didn't have great international careers or go on to sort of play for top teams because, well, if you spent enough games in that league to get to the top of that table, you probably people didn't think you were worthy of going up a step. But like you said, he's 16 doing this. Yeah. He's not 17 or 18 or what, he's got a couple more. He's just turned 17, hasn't he?
Exactly.
So, do you expect, I know you and Joe have spoken about this, but do you think he's going to get a chance in the first team this season? Do you think he's ready for that?
Why not. I think definitely ready to be in and amongst first team training. I mean, he was at Arsenal before we signed him, and if there was an opportunity, maybe in the Europa League later in the season, or if we get through our cup draws, which I know are quite tricky. We've got Arsenal and Spurs.
Just get one easy cup tie.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
But I think he's definitely got the physical frame to be competitive in first team football, and I'd like to see him given a chance before the season ends. And above all else, I think he deserves it just based on his goal scoring record.
It's ridiculous how many goals he's scored. And what do you think sets him apart from United? Have had a lot of players down the years who've sort of in that area of James Wilson or Charlie McNeil, even the likes of Kiko Makeda, or these people who have got great goal scoring records at youth level, come into the first team and don't quite make it, never really even get a push. Yeah. Like never get 10 games, let alone 100 games, which is what we'd all, etc., which is what we'd all want. Like, what do you think the difference is between some of those players we've mentioned and Chido Obi, where you think he could actually have a career at the top level? It
is so hard to predict, and there are so many variables that...
No one's going to hold it against you if he doesn't,
But I think one thing that matters is just being in the right moment for the youngsters. And I think where United are... being a team that are really underperforming, they've got a new coach who is very keen on youth integration, and two strikers who haven't yet convinced everyone that they are nailed on to be successful in the long term. I like both Højlund and Xerxes, but I think it's fair to say they have more to prove. And I think...
neither of them have had Wayne Rooney output, have they?
Yeah. So fair. More than anything, I think it's probably the right moment for him to, if he was to get a breakthrough, you can kind of see that path making itself obvious for him. Outside of goal scoring, his athletic qualities, physical frame, he's 6'3", 6'4", something like that. Stands out as a giant amongst youth players, and even against the first team opposition like Rochdale, you can see that physically he holds his own. He's very quick, he's agile for his frame, and he is more than a goal scorer. He got the first assist for Ibragimov's goal against Rochdale, but he almost created another with a really lovely cross to Ennis at the back post. Ennis unfortunately hit the post, but he's already showing signs that he can be a bit of a creator. He can pin defenders well and hold up the ball.
That's good. So I think I remember all like that because he likes those direct passes into the striker, doesn't he? And then laying it back off to the tens. And
I think he has a lot of qualities that Amarim, might turn out to like. Like I said, you can't ever predict developmental outcomes perfectly. Some players that in the past I've thought were absolutely nailed on to become first teamers haven't turned out the way I expected. One of them's Isaac Hansen-Aaron. I don't know if you remember him a few years ago.
Technically phenomenal.
Absolutely,
like you see it in pre-season or the games I've seen him play where his centre of gravity is brilliant and he's got a sort of like, I don't know, he kind of glides with the ball, doesn't he? But never quite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was saying at the time, I think he's every bit as good as Kobbie Mainoo. I thought I thought they'd go on together to become a bit of a established partnership, but it never worked out for him. And I think just yesterday it was announced that he's going on loan to a Danish side from Werder Bremen, where he can't get minutes.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And someone like Kobbie Mainoo, who I guess everyone knew he stood out of that team, him and Garnacho were the sort of standouts, but it's almost like we waited for him to get fit last season and then just played him every game, and that's how good he was. And then next thing you know, he's playing in the Euros final.
Some players,
it's crazy.
You don't know until you give them a try, and then they're at the level. Yeah. And then other players, it takes years for them to kind of establish that quality and level, and never worked out for Isaac Hansen-Aaron, and so it just shows you that you can never reliably predict it.
No.
Obviously, you can look at a number of different attributes that might help them make a first team transition, but it's impossible to say.
Yeah. We talked about the under-21s there. A few days after that Rochdale game, they played in another sort of weird international European Cup thing. What's the cup? Who did they play? What was the score?
It's the Premier League International Cup.
What's that?
A competition.
Right.
Is
this the same as what was the other one called? Sorry, I hate to be not. What's the one the under-19s just played in?
The UEFA Youth League.
This isn't that.
That's not that. No.
Okay, so what is this?
So the Premier League invited, I think it's 16 teams across Europe to come and play against under-21 sides. The European sides are also under-21 opposition.
Right.
And it's basically just an opportunity for the English sides to get experience playing against foreign opposition.
Is there a trophy at the end of it?
I think there is, but it's not one that is particularly prestigious or that the club are desperate to win amongst. Yeah. Is there
this obviously that was the under-19s? This is the under-21s. Is there a separate under-21s? Like international Champions League equivalent, or is it just that under-19s one?
Yeah, it's just the main kind of prestigious one is the UEFA Youth League, which is under-19s.
So in this we played United's under-21s versus Sparta Prague under-21s. Yeah. Where was the game? What was the score?
It was at Carrington.
Yeah.
It was 3-1 to Sparta Prague.
Yeah.
No one could watch it.
What's this all about? I saw you talking about this on Twitter a few days ago when it happened.
Well, it was blocked because of. Well, on one hand, there are resource issues with MUTV because a lot of cuts happening club-wide, right. So they aren't always able to allocate the necessary resources to have a live broadcast of the game. But also in this case, it was blocked by the Premier League because it clashed with Premier League games, which I think is just ridiculous. Because
what do you mean by that?
So clubs aren't allowed to broadcast their games live if they clash with Premier League games that are happening at the same time.
Why?
No one knows.
So Man United's first team were playing at the same time? Or
Not
just
United's,
all the
just
Premier League
any
teams?
Premier League team.
Well, who cares?
Yeah, there's no
shame.
crossover in audience at all. I think it's stupid and it's greedy, but it also doesn't make sense because I don't think they're losing any money from fans watching an MUTV stream of a game as opposed to the Premier League game that would be on at the same time.
No offence, but how many fans who would have been watching Villa Tottenham are now watching United's under-21s? Yeah. Like what, a couple of hundred? If that. I hate stuff like that, especially when you think like if you want to make stars in football, you want to bring more eyes. If you're just focused on money, which obviously we're not, but the Premier League is, then establishing under-21s players and under-18s players as these sort of stars of the future and giving them an ability to have a fan base, surely that's a great way to do that. You're bringing through pre-made people with pre-made fan bases. That just seems idiotic to me.
Yeah, and it's the same for the UEFA Youth League games as well. So most of our Youth League games so far we haven't been able to broadcast. Yesterday's wasn't on. Because it's the same rule that if there's a Champions League game on at the same time and they clash, then you're not allowed to broadcast it. It's just
I mean, I can understand it from a sort of welfare, and some of these kids are 16 and
for the younger age groups, absolutely.
Can you play in the under-18s if you're 15 or no?
Yeah, you can be pretty much any age.
Okay, so I guess there could be an issue there,
but to an extent. But I mean, so Max Dowman is a player at Arsenal who is garnering a lot of attention at the moment. He made his under-18 debut for Arsenal last season at 13.
Crikey.
He's training with their first team now and stuff. So he's
what is he 15?
I think he's just about to turn 15, or he's
training
just
with the
recently
first team.
turned 15.
What position does he play?
He's an attacking midfielder. You're going to hear a lot about him in the coming years.
Although, who was it who Arsenal brought through about 3 years ago just so they could say they had the youngest ever Premier League player? It was like 15.
That was Manieri.
And
well, to be fair, he's now making an impact.
Yeah. He's doing all right. Yeah. All right, I'll take that back then. Maybe they won't just do it for the sake of it.
But to be fair, there are cases where they will just give him a debut way younger than they actually are ready to.
Yeah.
And they always say that it's something to do with proving a pathway, but I think it's so silly because if you're going to give them one appearance and then not play them for the next 2 years, then it has no role to play in their actual developmental pathway. So it just seems like an empty promise, to me. Yeah. I don't really understand it. But
no. So you couldn't watch it. Is there radio? Is there after the fact highlights?
There were
anything?
a few highlights released. So Ethan Wheatley opened the scoring very early in the 8th minute. So you can find his goal. It was a nice kind of well-timed dinked finish over the goalie from pretty close range, and it was a good run from him, to be fair, leading up to that. But just before half-time, there was a freakish flurry of 3 goals in 2 minutes from Sparta Prague.
So United, isn't it?
Yeah. Which,
this is like Ten Hag all over again, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think you know what you're doing, and then all of a sudden we've conceded 3 goals.
Exactly. And and I think that just killed the game.
Yeah.
Killed it completely. And that's all I can really say about it, to be honest, because we can't watch the game. We didn't know really what happened.
So is this a knockout as well? Are we out of this, or how does this settle?
So this is the games they're playing are in a group phase at the moment.
Right. Okay.
We're 7th out of 8 teams.
Well, that's not good, is it?
It's not great. Liverpool are below us, so that's
not bad.
one bonus.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's the same pattern of us not doing very well against foreign opposition, usually European. I would say it's strange because the quality in our squad and in the 18s and 21s is fantastic. There are many players that I'm sure will go on to have great careers. Hopefully, some of them at United.
Yeah.
But I guess something in these competitions just doesn't click as a collective. And it's weird. It's difficult at under 21 level because there's so much rotation in terms of who's available. Players either injured, getting called up to the first team, or going out on loan or stuff like that. So it is really difficult to manage, I think, an under 21 team compared to the predictability of under 18 football, where your squad is largely going to stay the same throughout the season. So you can be a little bit more consistent in terms of your results and the way you play. But yeah, it's interesting. Hopefully those results improve, but it's never the be all and end all of academy football. The main thing is player development and making sure that everyone gets chances and gets experience against different types of opposition.
So the under 18s then, I know a lot of them were playing for the under 19s, but they didn't have a game this week?
Well, they did, but it was postponed because of the weather. Storm Dara.
Storm Dara.
Yeah.
Where was the game meant to be?
At Carrington.
Didn't United play the same day at Old Trafford?
Yes. No? I don't know.
I think they did, didn't they?
Yes.
On Saturday?
Yeah. I guess
that's weird that one was cancelled but one wasn't.
Yeah, I guess it's easier to manage against, when you've got a big stadium compared to like a youth ground.
The open-sided.
Yes.
Carrington. Okay, so no game there. When do they play next? Because I feel like that's, after these, I know there was one win, but a couple of losses in there, we could do with a bit of a confidence booster. So they play Coventry next in the FA Youth Cup, which will be a really big game. Obviously, the Youth Cup is the domestically the most prestigious competition and the one that we'll really want to be winning. Despite the success of last season, winning that kind of domestic treble, the Youth Cup is kind of the one that got away. Who did they lose to again?
Swindon.
Yeah, that's not right, is it? What happened that day?
Just everyone had an off day, it felt like.
Bizarre, isn't it? So that game's coming up. When's that?
Wednesday the 18th.
Wednesday the 18th.
That's at Lee Sports Village, which is a bit awkward to get to. Apparently they weren't able to organise it to be at Old Trafford like it usually would.
Right.
But again, if fans can get down to that game to support the boys, then absolutely do so. And yeah, fingers crossed we can bounce back from the result in the Youth League and progress to the next stage of the FA Youth Cup, because always a competition that United will be wanting to win.
And you mentioned before we started recording as well about that's their last game until like the 18th of January.
Yeah, there's always a big break for the 18s over the winter.
So maybe could be a time for some of those 18s to train with the first team.
Yeah, I'd imagine we'll see maybe a couple more included in first team training and potentially being called up to the squad depending on who's available, maybe injuries. You never know. Obviously, Christmas is a really busy period for the first team, so you have to expect some injuries. And we saw Godwill Kokonki included against Arsenal as a result of Martinez and Evans and Lindelof not being available. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities there to be had, and I would expect to see some more new faces in first team training, hopefully.
I'd love that. I'd love that. Right, thank you very much. Thank you for coming on, Finn, as always.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry,
it's a pleasure.
You weren't able to watch some of the games due to ridiculous restrictions.
Yeah.
But like I said, you filled us in on everything else. So absolutely brilliant. Thank you for joining us at home. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This has been the Academy Review with Academy Scoop Finn himself. We'll see you in a bit.